So I had a person on another social media website comment on one of my videos, and the guy basically said, "Why do you do your math the way you do? Like, why do you use the math that you use to calculate the value of a house that you're trying to wholesale a bird dog or invest in or whatever?" And I want to show you the numbers that I was using in this video that this guy saw. So, and if you want to find out how I find houses, look in the description. I can help you out with that. So in my last video, I was talking about this house that I went and saw. I did a walkthrough of this house, and I did a video on my channel of the walkthrough. And it was a seller, this landlord, that called me from my direct mail campaign. And I went and saw his house, and I didn't like his house. He doesn't know what he wants, the seller. He doesn't know what he wants. But in my last video, I did a evaluation of the house. So I had 5 comparables, and I compared them to this subject property, the property that I went and seen, the property that I'm trying to value. And the numbers that I came up with was $185,000 was the ceiling. So this is what the house would sell for in A condition. So that's my ceiling. My floor was 120. So this is what the house could sell for in its current condition. And right now, the house is in a D condition. So it is not livable. I would not move a tenant in. I would not move anyone into this house the way it sits today. So it needs some work. It needs a little bit of work. And, in that video I did yesterday, I said that the house needs about $20,000 worth of work to get it to a C condition. So that would make it livable. But actually, I think it would need more than that, because this landlord, I call this landlord a slumlord, because he never took care of his property during the duration of his ownership. He still owns it, but he's looking to sell. But he never did any updates since he owned it. And I think he bought it so the seller bought this house for $85,000 in 2006. So he bought this house for $85,000. So, he's not going to take anything under that. But in that last video, I said that I wouldn't buy this house unless I can buy it for like $50K. So the house, in that last video, I said it needed $20K in repairs. I was thinking about it today. I was like, man, it's going to need way more than this. It's going to need way more than this. Also in that video I did yesterday, I said that I wouldn't be comfortable unless there was 70K as the spread, 70K there between the price of what I can sell it at, which is this, in as is condition, and between that price and the price I would buy it for, which was like 50K or 60K. I think it was 50K, because both of these would add up to this 120. So I would kind of feel I would feel more comfortable with this this amount of spread here to take care of repairs and whatever. But to be honest, I wouldn't buy this house. That's why I skipped on it. I skipped on this house. I didn't buy it because it was built in 1944, and it needs so much work. A new roof, floor, maybe subfloor, joists. It may need those things. The foundation needs to be checked. It needs everything. It needs a lot. This is one of those properties that I wouldn't try to take on. I would leave this in the hands of some investor out there who just loves to turn an ugly duckling to a beautiful swan. Um, this year built really concerns me because, like I said, he never updated it during his duration of his ownership. So it's all original. Everything in here was exactly what was in there in 1944 when it was built. So it's a lost cause. It's not a property that I would like to take a chance on. But the guy that made the comment about how I did my math, he was pretty mad at the fact that I valued the house at 120. And he was basically saying, why did you value the house at 120 when really this is the true value of the house? The house is really worth, its true value is 185,000. So he was like, why didn't you value it at that price? So this is the price that the house would sell for if it was in tip top shape. And I mean, so we're talking A condition A. That means that it's livable and it has all new updates. Okay. So that means that the house is livable and it has new flooring, a new roof, all new doors, everything. The works is what I like to call it. The works. So that's a full remodel. And so the guy was like, wow, this is the true value. Why don't you base your offer price and everything else off of this number? Why don't you do that? And I don't know the guy's skill level. Maybe he has some experience in real estate. Maybe he does DIY home renovations on the side on the weekends, for some extra income. Maybe he knows how to remodel a house on a budget. I don't know. I don't know, but he does not. He's not me. He doesn't know my skill level, and my skill level is a person. I'm a person that I never had any background experience in real estate renovations. I didn't know before I got into real estate investing 9 years ago. I didn't know anything about how to fix up a house or anything. I don't even try to attempt to do these things in my own home on my own. So I don't know. I have no interest in doing the work it takes to get a house to B or A condition, or C condition for that matter. I have no interest of picking up a hammer and a nail and doing some work myself. So an investor like me, I would have to hire out the labor to do the work. So I would buy the material and give the material to a contractor, subcontractors, whoever, handyman. I will give that material to them to do the work, and I will pay them for their labor, their time and their labor. So that's the type of investor I am. And because that is the type of real estate investor I am, I do not want to pay for labor. I do not want to pay for labor, nor do I want to pay for materials that much. I mean, you have to pay for materials to get the house in good condition. But my point is, I don't want to spend any money at all. All I want to do is make money. That's all I want to do is make the money. And I don't value my houses. I don't use this true value here, this value that the house would sell at if it was all fixed up with new materials, like flipped. I don't use that as my true value or ARV, because I don't want to do anything to the house. I want to sell the house in its as is condition. That's always the goal, really. you'll realize this as you do more investing in real estate. As you get into the business, and as you talk to cash buyers and people who are millionaires, multimillionaires, and they do flips all the time, you'll start to speak to these people and you start to learn that they don't want to, some of them do not want to do any work at all to the house. Because once you start doing the work, things can go wrong. You have to rely on contractors. If you're relying on labor, you have to rely on contractors, and they can be flaky. The good ones are good and reliable, but they're hard to find. They're kind of hard to find. And the people who have good contractors, they keep them, and they don't want them to be working for anyone else while they're doing flips or whatever. They want them to be available, so they keep them to themselves. But when you get into that process of doing flips, man, there's a lot of things that could go wrong during that process. It could take longer than you expected. You could price the house wrong, and it could not, it won't sell for what you thought it would sell for. It won't sell for what you thought it would sell for. And you put all this work into the house. All the work is in there. Once you spend the money on the materials and the labor, that's done. That's done. You can't get that back. So, if you spend all your money on labor and materials, and then you realize that you can't sell the house for what you thought you could sell it for, it's too late. You got to take a loss, or maybe you'll make a little bit of money, or even, break even. But that's what I'm saying. That's my point. I don't want to do any work to the house, and you shouldn't either. At this stage, like where we're at right now, like I'm at the stage where, okay, I've been bird dogging and wholesaling for 9 years. I consider myself a good wholesaler. I consider myself a pretty good investor, not a wholesaler. I consider myself a pretty good investor, because wholesaling is just a tool. It's just a tool you use. I don't even wholesale a lot. I don't wholesale that much. I've only done 30 deals in my 9 years, and half of those were wholesales and half of those were bird dogs. So, as you can see as you can see from the amount of deals I've done and how I done them and how I did them, which half of them were wholesales and half of them were bird dogs. I just use these techniques as tools. I'm not a wholesaler, and I'm not just a bird dogger. So you use these tools, whenever you think they need to be used. So, like I said, I'm at the point where I am, right. Like I said, I consider myself a good investor, a really good investor, still a beginner, really. I am at the point in my investing career where I can buy a house now. I have enough money to buy a house, buy a property, and flip it. I've never flipped a house myself. So I'm going into this new part of my investing career very conservatively. I'm making sure at this stage that I'm trying not to make any mistakes. And some people say you got to make mistakes. That's how you learn. That's how you got to fail to be successful. I'm ready to fail. I failed at wholesaling and bird dogging plenty of times, but I don't want to get into flipping on my own and making. I don't want to make too many mistakes. So because I'm at that point in my career, I'm ready to buy. I'm watching. I'm doing a lot of watching, and I know a lot of flippers around town, around my area, and I noticed that the problems arise when they attempt to do the renovations or the remodels. Like I said, I know some investors, some flippers out there who just flip like I want to flip, and that's just flipping at the as is price, doing as little as possible to the house to get it to livable condition, and then selling it and letting someone else do the whole flip thing. I know some investors that do that, and that's the way that I would like to invest. Um, like because like I said, the problems arise when you attempt to do this. When you attempt to get a property in a condition, and that causes you to have to go to Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever or wherever and get all these materials and find these contractors, and then you have to go through that whole thing, that whole process. And that is where all of the problems arise at. That, and also misreading the neighborhood as well, not getting the after repair value right. You know, that's where another problem exists. So there's two big problems. Well, there's three big problems. I said this in another video. One problem is not having enough spread for your remodels, not having enough spread there. The next problem is misreading the neighborhood. And the third problem when you get into flipping is the flip itself, attempting to buy the materials and do, unless you're going to do the work yourself, you can save a lot of money by not paying for labor. But if you're going to get into the whole thing where you need labor and you buy the materials, but you need the labor, that whole thing, that's where the problems arise at. Sometimes it goes successfully. So you cannot just brush it off like, okay, I'm never going to flip anything. It's sometimes it's a great idea to flip. It's a great idea to get labor and get materials, because if you can get labor and materials and do minimal work in the property, then that will pay off. Just cosmetic work. That's really what every investor wants to do. We just want to do paint and touch up, little touch up here and there, touch ups. We just want to do touch ups here and there. We don't want to get in there and start knocking the walls down and pulling the sheetrock off and redoing the floors. We don't really want to do that. We as investors, even the most experienced investors I know, they don't really want to do that. They do want to flip. They love to flip. Some of them love to flip, and they love to turn something ugly into something pretty. But they do not. Everyone has the same shared thinking. You want to do as little as possible to the house. Okay, you want to do as little as you can. So the guy asked me, why do I value my properties at the as is value? Because I just want to sell the thing in its current condition. I am interested in getting it to a C condition. I am interested in getting it here. So whatever amount that takes to get it to here, I'm interested in that as well. But first of all, I want to know whether or not I can sell it for in its current condition. I want to know that. I want to know if I can sell it here. This is the first thing I'm looking at. That is why I value my properties that I look at in their as is condition, the as is value. The number one question I ask myself when I get a property across my desk: how much can I sell this property for in its current condition without doing any work at all? What can I sell it for? So that is why I don't use this as the true value. And some investors out there, I don't really have a lot of subscribers, a lot of viewers right now, because I just started this channel. But I would imagine that if I did have a lot of subscribers and viewers, I would get a lot of criticism on not valuing the house at this value, because I'm sure there will be a bunch of people who would say, this is what you should value the property at. It's really worth 185. So you take down, you subtract what you need for repairs and labor and all that, closing costs and whatever else, concessions, commissions. Commissions. You subtract that, and then you can get your offer. You're selling for whatever you can offer this person. I don't do that. I don't ride off the fact that this is the value of the house, because it's not really. They call this the true value of the house. Yeah, this is what it could sell for in this neighborhood. It could sell for at this price. But is true value right now? Because this is in the future. This is like we're hoping that it'll sell for 185. We're hoping. Based on other houses in the neighborhood, it will sell for 185. But it's still a number that is unreal, really. It's still something that's just, it's something that we're hoping for, and we're basing it off what other properties in the neighborhood have sold for. So, it's kind of, you can kind of take that number as the true value. Like, okay, this house over here, house A sold for 185, and it was a similar house as our subject property here. And it was fixed up and everything, and it sold for 185. And then you have house B over here. It was, not as fixed up as much as house A, but it's similar to our subject property, and it sold for 180. So it's safe to say that this property here, our subject property, will sell for 180, 185. But that's still a guess. It's still an estimate. It's still an estimate, bro. The true value, they call this the true value. I call this is the number that we have right now. Even though, mind you, you have to get this as is value from comparables. You do have to get this value from comparables. But we don't have to, once we get the as is value, it's more concrete. It's more concrete because you're not having to do any work to it at all. You're finding out what other houses have sold for that are similar in condition as your subject property. And I mean, we all of these are estimates. I understand, all of these are estimates, but to me, in my view, this is your true value here. This is what it will sell for today. And that's what I want to know. I want to know what the house will sell for right now, this very minute. That to me, that's the true value of it. That's concrete. I can say today I can sell it for 120. Now, if I get in there and buy materials and get the labor and put some work into the house, based on the comparables, it will sell for 185. And you're kind of doing the same thing with the 120, but you're not doing anything to it when you value it at the as is 120 price. Here you're doing things to it. You're taking money out of your pocket, your budget or whatever, and you having to put this money in, and then it may not go as you planned. It may require more money to get it to this condition here, because things may go wrong. The contractors may get in there and find something that you never expected them to find. And then now you got to shell out money to fix that problem. Like I always say, there's always a 20% delta in what you thought the estimated repairs were and what they truly are. There's always a 20% delta there. And you can fit that into your budget, but then there will be another 20% on top of that. It's just one of those things that just happens. You can't really prepare for it. So to me, this is the true value. They call this the true value, the top number it can sell for. But this right here, to me, is more concrete. You are finding this out through comparables, just like this, so I understand that. But that is why I look for the as is value. I look for this, I don't really pay attention to this. To me, this is a bonus. This is a bonus because I'm always looking at a property like I'm going to rent it out and keep it for the long term. That's just the type of investor I am. I want to keep the property. I want to keep it. I want to rent it, keep it, and have this equity. If this equity is here, if this 185 is really here, after updates and everything, That's fine. That's fine. That can grow over time. Um, that's your edge, right? That's your edge. It's knowing that if you buy this property, it could be worth 185. It's a could be, but today it's worth 120. I don't care what it will be worth in September of 2026. I don't care what it'll be worth then. I'm worried about what it's worth today. So that's why I value the properties like this. People think that just because they see a couple people online doing flips or whatever, and most of these people who are doing flips, they're very experienced. So, people think that just because you see people flipping online, that it's just all rainbows and sunshine. Things go wrong. I had an investor I know. I've been working with this investor for the last 9 years, and he has about 30 years of experience. So, this cash buyer I know, he has 30 years experience flipping. He also has about 30 rental houses. He's made millions in real estate, flipping and with his rentals. He bought a house last year, I believe, or the year before last. So he bought a house and I think he paid like 170K for it. So he paid 170K and I think he put like 60K into it for repairs for the renovation or remodel. He put 60K in it. So he is in at what? That's 13, 3, 1, 2, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So he is all in at 230, and then he had closing costs as well. When he bought this house, he had closing costs in there as well. But we'll just say 130. We'll just say 230. I'm sorry. So he's all in at 230. Now, he thought this property was going to take him about 4 months to flip. Actually, it took him 11 months to flip this property. He thought that the renovation here, he thought that the renovation was going to be about, he said he wanted to do a light flip to the property because he bought the property for 170. It was in C condition. It was livable. It wasn't updated. Didn't have it didn't have a new floor in it. No new cabinets. It had everything in it, and it was livable. It had everything in it that would make it livable, but it just wasn't pretty. So he thought he was just going to do some paint and it's just some cosmetic work. So he thought it was going to take him about 30K to remodel the house. But as you can see, it actually cost him 60,000 to remodel this house, because when his contractors got in the house, they found all sorts of problems. They found a lot of problems. So his budget turned from 30K to 60K. The time to renovate the house went from 4 months to 11 months because he had issues with contractors. Some took off, some had emergencies and family issues, and he had to fire a couple of them. He had to hire new ones, and so this flip went from 4 to 11 months. And then when he found someone to buy the house, the person that he found to buy the house was someone that he knew. Coincidentally, he didn't know that he was going to meet this guy. Actually, this guy that wanted to buy his house is from the same city and state that this cash buyer is from. So they were, really, really friendly. He got to know this buyer because he was selling the house himself. He didn't use a real estate agent. So he was talking to this buyer every day, and they were just conversating about things that they used to do when, back at their hometown, in their home state. And so he got really friendly with this buyer, and this buyer was going to buy the house for 250, but because he got so friendly with the cash buyer here, the guy saw the house and he didn't like some things. He didn't like things, and that's what he said. So he got into the house and he saw a couple things. He was like, I don't really like that. I don't really like that color, and this and that. He started, naming things that he didn't like about the house, which made him, which made the cash buyer here, my cash buyer here, it made him lower his price just so he can get rid of the property. He had it for 11 months. So he's paying holding costs while he has the property. He's paying for everything because he has to show the house, you know what I'm saying? So he's like desperate at this point. My cash buyer is like desperate at this point. He's like, he couldn't really, first of all, he couldn't really find anyone to buy it at this range in this area because this is kind of expensive, surprisingly, because he's selling it in an environment where interest rates are really high. So he couldn't find anyone to buy the property for 250. But, along comes his friend from his hometown. I mean, his friend now, but he didn't know him before. But along comes this guy, and he says he's looking for a house. He just moved here. And he's looking for a house and he wants to buy this house, but he doesn't like some things. He's probably just trying to get to this cash buyer so he can lower the price. The guy probably doesn't mind what the cabinets look like or the walls or whatever that he didn't like. He probably liked those things, but he knew that he could get over on my cash buyer here because he's friendly with him. So this guy's like, he's an artist, in negotiations. He just became, so this buyer just became my cash buyer's friend so he can manipulate him. So my cash buyer ended up lowering the price to 230 at first. And the guy was thinking about this for a couple days or weeks or whatever. And he said that he wasn't satisfied at 230. He said that he would be more satisfied at like 200,000. He told my cash buyer, he said, I could buy the house today, right now, for 200K. And my cash buyer, I call him my cash buyer, but he's really my friend. But just for the purposes of this video, I'm gonna call him my cash buyer. My cash buyer took this price. He took the 200K. He accepted it because he was friendly with this guy, because he was desperate. He had this property for so long, 11 months. He already went over budget with the remodel. All these things came into play and worked in favor for the new buyer. So this guy right here bought the house at 200K, and my cash buyer put 230. He's 230 all in. You know what I mean? And this buyer offered to pay for the closing costs. I mean, he's getting a great deal. The house is probably worth like, 250. Maybe it wasn't worth 250, but my cash buyer thought it was worth 250. That's what he thought. He thought it was worth 250, and according to the comparables in the neighborhood, it was worth 250. But it wasn't. It probably was worth 200,000. Or maybe it wasn't worth that. You don't know. You really don't know. All of these are estimates. You estimating the ARV. It's only an estimate. You don't know. But there's some personal things going on here. So it probably wasn't. It probably was worth between 250 and 230, somewhere along in here. It's worth after the fix up and everything, because it looked real good. The remodel was done really nicely. But it sold for 200 because my cash buyer was too friendly with this new buyer. He was too friendly with him, and then he was so desperate because he overpaid for the renovation. I mean, the renovation, his renovation budget, it doubled in size. He wasn't expecting that. And then he kept it for too long. So he was desperate. So he sold it. He sold his house to the guy for 230 and took a $30,000 loss. This guy has 30 years experience flipping houses. This guy has 30 rentals. He's an expert. You would look at this guy and listen to this guy, and you would say he's an expert. I mean, he can talk your head around. He could talk real estate like all day, and you would be amazed at what he knows, and you can learn something from him every time you speak to him about real estate. You would be amazed. You would consider him an expert. He's a master at real estate. But look what happened to him. Imagine if this was you. You don't want this to happen to you. That's my point. That's why I look at these types of deals from cash buyer, and I know other types of deals that have that cash buyers have done like this, where they actually lose money. They're lucky when they break even. They actually lose money. I mean, he can stand to lose 30K, but a person like me, I couldn't stand at this point right now. I couldn't stand to lose 30,000. That would be detrimental to my situation. 30K. But see, he can lose this because he has millions. He has millions of dollars, so he can stand it. This is really not. He looks at this as just like a bump in the road. Oh, it was a loss, but I lost 30K. But this is what can happen if you get into flipping, even if you got this much of experience. So people ask me why I do my math the way I do it, and why do I focus on as is condition. This is why, because if he would have never did the remodel and just bought it as is and tried to get it at a price to where he could still profit by selling it in its as is condition, he probably would have missed this whole headache. He probably wouldn't have had it for so long. Another investor probably would have came by and bought the property, or maybe a homeowner, because the property was in C condition. It was in livable condition when he bought it for 170. It was in livable condition. He could have sold it. He could have sold the property, because I saw it. He could have sold the property in its as is condition, and it would have took a while. Who knows how long it would have took? Who knows how long it would have taken him to sell it? But I doubt that he would have lost so much money if he would have sold it in as is condition, or if he would have, he would have to, in order for him to sell it in as is condition, he would have had to get it at a price to where it would make sense to sell it in as is condition. So if this was the worth of the house in as is condition, 170, I would have probably offered, tried to offer, because it was already in livable condition. I would have probably offered maybe 130, 140, something like that. 130, 140. I would have probably offered one of these, and put it on the market and sold it for 170, because it was in livable condition. It was in ordinary condition. So I would have did this. You know what I mean? And if it wouldn't have sold at 170, I would have sold it at one of these numbers and broke even, worst case. But because he did all of this, he chose to go through with the remodel because he's a remodel guy. Once these investors turn into flippers, that's what they are. That's how they identify themselves. They go get coffee at Starbucks and they talk about all the houses they've renovated, and they go to Home Depot and they talk to random people and say, "Oh yeah, I flipped 600 properties in my 30 years." And see, they have to, in order to keep that story going, they have to keep doing this. You know what I mean? So yeah, bro, like this is what could happen. I mean, if you're a new person, don't get scared of this. Don't get scared of flipping. You just have to be smarter. You just have to be smarter than the next person. You have to really value these houses, not correctly, because you can never get it all the way correct. You can get within a range, and and as you gain more experience, you'll have an eye for staying in that range of safety, when you value in properties. But I found that if you value properties, if you try to do the least amount of work as possible, it'll be better for you in the long run. It'll better be, because this is where the problem arises when you get into this whole renovation process. That's where the problems go. That's where the problems come from. That when you decide to base a house off of its true, that's what they call it, that is true after repair value. Like for my house that I passed on, the 185, if I would have based it off of this assumes, if I called this the true value, if I would have said this was the ARV, this assumes that I'm going to get this house, my subject property, into a condition. And what does that take? That takes materials and labor. And this is where problems arise. This is where the problems arise. When you make that decision to do this. Now, you have to be smart about it. I wouldn't say you should not do this. You should not flip, because sometimes it makes sense to flip, especially like if I can get this property right here. So if I base the value of the house on this after repair value for an A condition house to get it, so this is what the house will sell for in A condition. If I had $100,000 worth of spread there, and the house didn't need everything like my subject property does. My subject property needs everything. But if it was, if I had a big spread, a big spread, like, I mean, if I could get the house like what I would buy it for in its current condition, like 50,000, and then I had like, this spread here, 185, like, if I had this much as a spread, I would buy it. But I mean, at this price, I would buy it and just sell it for as is condition. But if I wanted to flip it, it would have to have this much of a spread, because this particular house needs a lot of work. It needs a lot of work. It needs everything. Ideally, you want to look at houses that don't need a lot of work. Ideally, you want to look at houses that don't need a lot of work. But my point is, the spread would have to be crazy big for me to make me want to go for this number, and what it would take to get to this number. The spread would have to be crazy. The spread would have to be big, $100,000. I'm comfortable with that. If I can get the house for 50,000, I would go for this number. I would go for this. If I wanted to be a person who wants to turn an ugly house into a new house, if I wanted to be that person, I would have to buy it for 50. I would feel real comfortable having this spread right here, and I would get it to this A condition. So, that is why if you caught any of that, that is why I would that's why I use the as is condition, the value of the house in its as is condition as my true ARV, because I don't want to do any work to it. Me in my investing career right now, I'm really really interested in buying properties, and selling them for their as is condition. So I'm interested in buying properties outright. So by not wholesaling them, but that is kind of like a form of wholesaling to me. I plan on. I'm looking right now. I'm actively looking. I've been looking all day today for houses as well. But once I do find a property to buy outright, I would buy a property like this for 50K myself. So I would take my cash and buy it and then hold on to it and try to sell it for like 70,000 to another investor and make 20K. That is a smart way to invest. Get buying the property, valuing the property at its as is value, whatever the value is as it sits, and then trying to get the property at a price that's under that as is value. If you need to get it into livable condition, then you have to factor that in as well. So that would be your budget for repairs to get it to as is condition. Not as is condition. When I say as is, it's kind of synonymous with livable condition to me in my brain. But whatever that amount is that it would take to get it to livable condition, you need to factor that in. But this is what I want to get to. I want to get to the point where I'm just valuing properties in their as is condition, and then getting them at a price under that and selling the property to an investor or homeowner. Because if you sell the property in a C average as is condition, a homeowner could move into there and do the renovation themselves. Some people like to move into properties, and they're not contractors, they're not investors really. They're just homeowners, and they want to get in there and make it make the house look however they want it to look, that suits them. But they will live in it. You have to present something that they can live in while they're doing the updates. Single guy, single girl who is handy, that's good with their hands, and they can get in there and move in the property and fix it up and then sell it. They may flip it. They may flip it. They may be hidden investors, and just don't know it yet. But that is what I want to be. So that's a form of wholesaling to me. Finding out what the value is of a property in its as is condition, so you don't have to do any work to it. Getting the property under contract or buying it yourself. I'm not really talking about the traditional wholesaling here, where you just assign your contract. Although you can do that, and it's kind of like the utopian view of wholesaling. Just handing it off like that. Getting it under contract without buying it. That's a lot of in the wholesaling world. They love the fact that they're not buying properties outright. Being a wholesaler, virtual wholesaler, whatever, they love the fact that they are not buying the property. But I say that if you're a local wholesaler like myself, or a local investor like myself, you need to have, especially if you're new, you need to have some properties under your belt. That you need to have some evidence of you buying properties, because when you're sending out mail, or when you're doing your marketing and you saying that we buy houses, I don't say that anymore, but when you do say that, It's good. Like if anything ever happens and people look into your situation, they need to see that you have bought some properties, and that you're not just false advertising yourself. You have to buy some of them. And the goal is to buy them. You know what I'm saying? That's the goal. You want to buy them. You want to buy a house at some point. You don't want to wholesale forever. I never recommend wholesaling and bird dogging only for forever. That's really what I mean. You don't want to wholesale forever only. That's a technique that you use when it's time to use it. You always want to go into a deal like you're going to buy it for yourself. That's how you need to pencil it. That's how you need to value it and try to figure out, how much it will cost you to buy it. Just pretend like even if you don't have the money, because I used to do that. Every time I would value a property, I would act like I'm finna buy it. I didn't have the money to buy it, but I'm going to value it like I'm buying it. So I'm putting everything, my concerns and my risk level into the deal because if I know that it's good for me, it's definitely good for this next person, this person who has a lot of experience. You should value properties like that. So, it's just, this is why I use the as is C condition property value as my true value. I don't use the ARV for a condition house as the true value because it's to me, it's not true. It's not the true value. It is a value that you can sell the property for in tip top shape. But to me, the truest value is the value of the house in its current condition right now. So that is why I do that. So, I'll talk to you later about more things. But that's it for today.